Ronnie Sills. I'm in the home of Mr. Val Tanner in Ardmore, Oklahoma. I was born in Gainesville, Texas. Parents moved here either in 97 or 98. I was just a kid at the time. My first schoolhouse was on between the railroad track south and 4th Avenue southwest. The schoolhouse was known as the Banks Building. Incidentally, the schoolhouse was built the year I first went to school. In those days, we didn't have county courthouses and jails and city jails. We had U.S. courthouse and jail only. The town was full of U.S. Marshals. And this was considered a jumping off place for all the outlaws from all over the country. A lot of them hung out around Ardmore. The Dalton boys and the James gang, Jesse James gang. When we came to Ardmore, we had no paved streets, no paved sidewalks. We lived on the corner of 1st Avenue and D Street southwest. And the only buildings that I can remember to the west of us is the old Episcopal Church, now the Little Theater building, the Catholic convent and church, and beyond that to the west was the McClish Ranch. I spent many a happy day on the McClish Ranch out with Uncle McClish, boy about my age. We used to go out there and go swimming in the cow pond, hunting and fishing. And we thought ourselves pretty good cowboys in those days. We knew how to ride and rope. I've seen large herds of longhorn cattle being driven into this town on the way to market. I used to run in the house and hide from them when I'd see them coming down the street, keeping from getting me. I've seen wagons with 6 and 8 oxen pulling them. The trade territory of Ardmore in those days, about the turn of the century, was from Lawton to the west, Purcell on the north, Hugo on the east, the Red River on the south. And the only mode of transportation was either by wagon, horseback or buggy. When the outlying territory began to come to Ardmore, they had to plan on at least a week's trip to get in and back home. They came in as parked the teams in a wagon yard. And usually the family and all of them, children and all, stayed at the wagon. That was their hotel. those days we had a horse-drawn fire engines, steam engines to fight fires with. L.C. Slaughter was the fire chief, and most of his crew was made up of volunteer firefighters, most of which was young businessmen around the town, and just volunteered to help in the firefighting. There were lots of bad men in and around Ardmore in those days. Us kids didn't dare cross Washington Street unless we knew exactly where we were going, and then we went on a run. We sure didn't get on Caddo Street because we knew we would have been killed. We felt we would anyway. The business district of the town was just across the railroad on the east. The old blue front store was a mercantile store owned by the Westheimer and Dalbys. And the wooden buildings from there on back up to about C Street to the west. All wooden buildings. In the fire of 1915, explosion, 1915, September of 1915, most of those old wooden buildings were blown up, and the Santa Fe Railway came in and replaced them. They spent millions in this town, I expect, replacing those old buildings without a lawsuit. No question. Just came in and the town rebuilt in good shape with brick buildings. And just west of B Street, on the Tivoli Hotel on the north side of the street, and the old U.S. courthouse just to the south of the Tivoli Hotel, all west of there, with the exception of maybe one building up on the old Jones building up on the corner of C Street northwest in Maine, were residences. Our family physician lived at that time right where the old New State Hardware was before they recently sold out. What did I say there? 58. We were a normal lot of kids in those days, I guess. We went swimming, hunting, and fishing, went to school, had our fights, had our friends, and we were friends one minute and fighting the next. But we never held any grudges. We always wound up friends.
How many people were in here, Mr. Tanner, when you came here?
Well, there were lots of transient people in this town at that time. A lot of them were gamblers, shysters, men of all description, I guess. You can find in any new boom town. Ardmore was a boom town in those days. And I'd say 1,500 to 2,000 about be the population at the time then.
What did most of the people do for a living then?
Oh, they did just what they're doing today. They were in the mercantile business and feed business, produce. My father and J.R. Pennington opened the first wholesale grocery store that's ever opened in this town. In those days when I was a kid, to go anywhere, you just didn't go. You went to Springer up here. You got to write up in the paper. Lone Grove or out to Oil Springs, which is now on Charlie Goddard's ranch out here near Berwyn, near Gene Orchard now. That's about as far as we ever thought of getting away from home. Oklahoma City was out of the question for a bunch of kids in those days. Just too far for kids thinking about making it. They didn't make it. But it was a 3 or 4 day run up to Oklahoma City.
Took 3 or 4 days to get there, huh?
Yeah, you had to go by horseback or buggy. Or train, you could go by train. But you didn't think about going anywhere in those days, at least we didn't. Longest trip I ever took when I was a kid, I went to Dallas.
To Dallas?
Oh, that was quite an experience. Went down to see my aunt. I used to go swimming on the plot of ground that's now Central Park in Arden. That was out of the city. That was in the country.
Was that a creek that run through there, or?
No, it was a swampy place. It was just swampy and low, and there was little old condos. If I remember it right, it was right in the northeast corner of the McClish Ranch.
Well, which way was travel when you did travel into Ardmore? How was it? Was it on the road to 77 now, or 70, or where they came in?
Well, I think it was. I think that road was up here. Came right through where to the south of R.C. Culvert's home up there.
Mm-hmm. Came in through there, huh?
The Von Keller Hospital on that corner.
Well, did they come in from the north or the south?
West. Usually that was from the western territory that came in that way.
Well, was there a road to went north or east or any direction out of Ardmore?
Well, that road was over and around by Gene Orchard. Then, at that time, the town was known as Berwyn. And the mountains, you couldn't get over these mountains to the north of us in that way at all. There was no roads up through there.
What about going to the river south? Was there a road there?
Yeah, your road went down pretty much the same route as 77 today. And where you turned back to the west to go across the bridge, you turned east and went across the pay bridge, a toll bridge over there. An old rickety toll bridge.
When did they build that bridge there at the river? Do you remember that?
That was in the 20s, I believe. They built that. That they did away with the toll bridge and put up this free bridge across Red River down to the south.
When was the first automobile you ever saw?
Oh, the first automobile I ever saw must have been about 1906 or 7. Maybe it was 1905, 6 or 7. There was 3 of them came into this town. If I'm not mistaken, they were Oldsmobiles. One of them was owned by one of the Edwards boys there were 2 or 3 of those boys. And maybe it was owned jointly by all 3 of them. Another one was owned by Dr. McCoy that lived over here in the northwest part of town. And the other was owned by our postmaster. I can't think of his name right now.
In those days, where were the cars made? Were they still made where they are now? They didn't bring them that far, did they?
Do what? Oh, no, I don't know where those cars were built in those days. But I don't think they were made in Detroit.
They were probably made in Texas somewhere, weren't they?
No, I think they were made back east, but the automobile market wasn't in Detroit at that time. Steve Douglas is the name of the other man, our postmaster. He owned the 3rd one of those cars. Oscar Ritter, Wade Ritter's brother, is the mechanic that came down and serviced and started those cars for the owners. And it was really a big day in Ardmore. Those automobiles, I think top speed on them was about 10 or 15 miles. All the kids around town got on their bicycles and followed them all over town. And they tell a story on old Dr. McCoy that he phoned his wife and told her he had his new automobile and he'd be out. She'd meet him, take her for a little drive, for her to meet him out the front. So he got out there and he'd forgotten to find out how to stop the automobile. He couldn't stop it, see? And he just waved at her as he first went by and went around the block and came back and still couldn't stop the automobile. And he finally ran out of gas, and time she got to him where he couldn't start it again because it didn't have any gasoline. That was a joke, of course. But I do know that all us boys followed him around on our bicycles. We took after one of them. Maybe another crowd took after another one. We followed them all over town. The automobile didn't run off and leave us.
Well, when was they first make that road out to Lake Murray? When was the lake built out there? Do you know that?
No, that I can't tell you when that lake was built the year, but I do know it was made in WPAD days, made work days. So it was sometime in the 30s.
You said something about when they brought the Indians through here and they stayed a couple of 3 days and then went on somewhere else. Did you say something about that?
Did I say something about it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember much about it, only they were curiosity to me. And I kept my distance because I was afraid of them. They were in their blankets and war regalia, and they came really darked out. Of course, us children, we were children in those days, we were afraid of them. We couldn't talk to them, they couldn't talk to us. We didn't know what their next move might be, so we kept our distance. But we were curious enough to get within sight of them. That's about all I can tell you about
when did you start? Did you, Mr. Tanner, did you go to school here in Ardmore whenever you went to school?
Oh, yeah. I went to school. My first school, as I said before, was the Banks building, which was down on the corner of 4th Avenue and C Street, southwest. That building's been torn down years ago, and nobody this generation, today's generation, would know anything about that, or maybe 3 generations back.
Oh, did you go to college, Mr. Tanner?
Yeah, I went to East Central State College at Ada. I went there the first year I started there the first year of that school. We had moved to Ada at that time.
The counties here were a little different. They were named different than they are now, weren't they?
I don't remember the counties being named different at all, because this has always been Carter County. It was named after our congressman, Charlie Carter. He was a very popular man in his day, and a good man. And I always remember this county as Carter County. Of course, we didn't have counties before statehood. This was part of Oklahoma, south of the Canadian River up here at Casell, was all territory. It didn't become part of the state of Oklahoma until the year 1907.
Where did you first work, Mr. Tanner, whenever you got out on your own?
Well, I left home at an early age and went to Gainesville. I had an uncle in Gainesville, S.J. Kennerly, in the hardware business down there, and I went down there and went to work for him and finished my schooling at night. Went to night school in Gainesville. Finished my schooling.
When did you come back to Oklahoma then?
I came back to Oklahoma in 1911 and went to work for J.B. Spraggins Hardware. Or the Stevens, Kennerly, and Spraggins Hardware. It was at that time. The Kennerly and Spraggins later dissolved the partnership, and Spraggins took this store, and Kennerly took the Gainesville store. The Spraggins store was located right where the Pioneer Hardware and Furniture Company is today, on the north side of Main Street, east of Washington. First block. East of Washington Street. I was here during the explosion, September the 27th, I believe, 1950. And was standing on the sidewalk facing east when a gasoline tank car on the Santa Fe Railroad exploded right there on East Main Street. I think there was 53 people killed in that explosion. And from Washington east, Main Street town was almost completely demolished. Leo Adkins' father was killed right there, right in front of Marcus Q's place there on Washington Street. He was one of the victims of that explosion. Lots of good men were killed.
How old were you when you got married, Mr. Tanner?
I was 42 years old. Passed away.
Well, Mr. Tanner, when did Ardmore start growing? I mean, you know, like pretty close. What year was it whenever it started, the population began to increase in Ardmore?
Well, Ardmore has always grown steadily. Ardmore, I don't think, has ever had a boom. Ardmore has just grown in spite of herself, with no help from anybody. She's had a lot of opposition. When we struck oil out here in 1913, out here in Word, Oklahoma, we went west of town, the businessmen just rose up and said, we don't want that element in town. We don't want any supply houses in this town. We just don't want the element that goes along with an oil field.
I mean, in other words, they didn't want any oil coming in through here, huh?
They didn't want that element of people. They thought they were roughnecks. They didn't want them in the town.